Hey guys, it's Wave Nunnally here again, and we're doing another kind of a brief Bible Unplugged session today. It will go along to some degree with what we've been doing before in these wonderful names of God that talk about how wonderful His deliverance is in our lives, and how much we need that kind of a God to intervene on our behalf. But we're going to divert a little bit today, and we're going to do a session on Purim, or Purim, some people pronounce. And we're going to do it in such a way as we also did Hanukkah back earlier in the winter. And we're going to approach it from the perspective of why is this relevant to us today? And so thus the reason for the title of our message today. We've got some interesting graphics here that you have Chag Purim Sameach, which is the proper or full Hebrew greeting. It means Feast of Purim Happy. So happy Purim. Is the primary greeting. Sometimes you can also just say Purim Sameach, or happy Purim. But the pictures are really helpful, I think, in setting the stage for understanding the modern popular observance of Purim. It sort of becomes kind of like a Jewish Halloween. You see the festive dress, the masks and that kind of thing. So it's dress up time. Kids especially love Purim and enjoy celebrating it. And then all kinds of unusual, fun, and creative decorations. I remember with respect to children that back when I was pastoring in Cincinnati, Ohio, we decided that we were going to do a Purim celebration at church. And it was going to be an evening service, and we invited everybody to do the kinds of things that the Jewish community does. Kids dress up. You go through the entire story of the book of Esther, and you teach kids to respond when they hear a hero like Mordecai or Esther's name, to cheer and to clap. And then when you hear the name of one of the villains like King Ahasuerus or Haman, then you boo and hiss and do your noisemakers and stuff like that. Well, it was the most unusual service. It made such an impression on the kids, and the parents absolutely loved it because the children were dialed in. They were getting Bible. They got the full meal deal, the whole story. And we never had a request to repeat a specific themed kind of service the entire time I was in ministry there. But this one, people were constantly asking, when do we get to do this again? Can we do this again next year? Oh, my children just raved about how much fun church was at that point. So for children, this is a wonderful opportunity to hand down the faith. So let's look at some of the basics of Purim. First of all, it is a story of God's deliverance and freedom. And if for no other reason, guys, that's something that makes it relevant to you and to me, to everybody today. This is what we've been doing in our series on studying some of the lesser known names of God. And that is to look at God's delivering power. Not only His power to deliver, but His willingness to get involved in the things that oppress or that bring us into some kind of bondage. Don't take away the opportunity for us to walk in that fullness of life, that abundant life that God planned for us. Another is that there's the reading of the entire book of Esther. How often do we do that? For any book, much less Esther. And by the way, another reason why this celebration is relevant to us is because this is a biblical book. This is stuff in our Bible. So if for no other reason than that, we have the opportunity and the privilege of celebrating one of these great acts of God that bring us into deliverance and freedom. Another is the opportunity for us to pass on the faith. Look at these little kids, and the little girl is dressed up like the heroine of the story, Esther, and this little boy is dressed up like mean, wicked Haman. And so there you have in one picture kind of a setup for the story, as it were. Also, the fun, unusual dress, the unusual kinds of foods. Here you have the Hamantaschen on the mask of the little boy, the Haman's ears, cookies that are made for this particular celebration. And then community gatherings that allow for the handing down of the faith within a covenant community, a group of people that have banded together and decided that together they are going to serve God and people. So why Purim? In the book of Esther, we were given the reason for the unusual name of this non-required feast. In the law of Moses, you're required to celebrate Passover. You're required to celebrate tabernacles, and you are required to celebrate Pentecost or weeks. Those are expected. This one, like Hanukkah, is optional, which is like, well, some of our funnest holidays, like Thanksgiving. No one holds a gun to our head and makes us celebrate Thanksgiving, but who would miss that? 4th of July, Independence Day. Oh my goodness, we can't wait to get together, have a cookout, shoot fireworks, have a bunch of fun with friends and family. So yeah, just because this is an optional feast definitely doesn't mean we should look past it. Sometimes the funnest ones are the ones that are not required. So in the first month, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, a Persian king, Pur, that is the lot, casting lots or, throwing dice, was cast before Haman. By the way, lots of these have been found in archaeological excavations. So the casting of lots or playing dice is not new with us. This is as ancient, it seems, as mankind itself. So the Pur, that is the lot, was cast before Haman day after day until the month of Adar. So now this is Esther chapter 3. Feel free to read that. In fact, as we're approaching Purim toward the end of the month, it's a late winter holiday. You might want to bang through the whole book, just go from one end to the other and read the whole thing in one setting, get the whole story in one time through. So HaMagid, or the telling, I borrowed this phrase actually from Passover, but the telling of the story is kind of like, what is the setting? It's in these people are Jews are still in exile. They're living in Persia, living up in the area of Tigris Euphrates. The main characters, of course, Esther, her uncle, adopted father, Mordecai, King Ahasuerus, and the wicked Haman, who is the villain of the story and is trying to arrange for all Jews in the entire kingdom to be put to death. A very common theme. An oppressor arises, and then God comes on the scene and delivers His people because of His love, His care, and His covenant promises to them. The plot, well, is a Jewish community threatened with extinction. Surprise, surprise. Some of my best friends in Israel say, look, here's the story of the Jewish people and the reason why there are so many holidays. Somebody tried to kill us. God overcame them and we won. Hey, let's celebrate and eat. Is just a kind of encapsulates this whole attitude of Jews toward their history. So, Jewish community threatened with extinction due to someone's hatred. That wouldn't be surprising in our world today or 70 years ago in the days of World War II. God has a plan, though, for His people, and people who are, He's put people in place. Those people have courage. God has strengthened them on the inside, and they have a willingness to be used by God, and then God brings about times a very surprising, great deliverance on behalf of His covenant people. So again, why is the festival of Purim relevant to us? Well, it's in our Bible, and we benefit from the encouragement and the challenge that biblical material brings into our lives. It's also a whole lot of fun. And if you're into fun, and I love fun, well, then the Feast of Purim is definitely for you. Kind of the main components of the story, stuff that we still quote today. Why is this book and this festival relevant to us? How often have we heard, if you stay silent, relief and deliverance will arise from another quarter or another place? This is Esther chapter 4, verse 14. Of course we hear that. And then who knows whether you have attained royalty for such a time as this. How often do we hear that quoted even today? For such a time as this. And so all of this stuff we find in the heart of the book of Esther. Mordecai challenging Esther, step up to the plate. Be God's person. Play your part. Do what God has called you to do and put you in place for. And by the way, that's a good message to us today as well. It's not just about God's deliverance and all the wonderful stuff, but this is a great challenge of play your part. It might be a big part, it might be a little bit part, but jump in there and be willing to be used by God. Great story, great message right out of the book of Esther. We hear about the main points of the book of Esther. King Ahasuerus promoted Haman and established his authority over everybody. And all the king's servants who were at the gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman, but because of Jewish commitment, I'll only bow down to, I'll only worship, I'll only do homage to God. Mordecai wouldn't bow down or pay homage, so now we have conflict. And Esther arises after this decree of putting Jews to death, putting Mordecai and his family to death. I'm going to go into the king. I'll do it, and it's not in accordance with the law. This is out of the norm, and if I perish, then I will perish. Look at all these cool symbols of Purim, and you can even play games at Purim. This is a great way, again, of handing down the faith to young people. So, one of the eunuchs that were before the king said, behold, the gallows standing at Haman's house are 50 cubits high. And Haman intended for Mordecai to be put to death on the gallows. So the king, in this surprise turn of events, this really kind of cool, ironic ending, is then you hang Haman, the one who was going to put the Jews to death. He ends up being put to death. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. In the book of Esther also, in every province, because of this grand intervention that God does for His people, there was gladness and joy for the Jews, and a feast and a holiday. There's the original Purim. And many among the peoples of the land became Jews. Listen to this. When God acts on your behalf and He exalts you from a terrible situation, oppression, some kind of situation that you need deliverance for, that becomes a testimony to people around, and they are attracted to this God. Many among the people of the land became Jews because of the dread, that fear and respect that we talked about back when we discussed El Gibor. They were respectful of the Jews, and that had come upon them in place of disdain and disregard. When you get to the New Testament, the same themes run right through it. John 1 says, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness couldn't grasp it, seize it, and overcome it. It seems like that whenever the time is the darkest, maybe you've noticed this in your reading of the Bible, your reading of history, when the time is the darkest, that seems to be when the light shines the brightest and when God comes through for His people. So for you, if this is a dark time financially or because of the weather or because of COVID and the situations that has spun off from that, this is a great time for God to step up on your behalf, make you a living illustration of His power and His compassion to everybody around you that will then attract them to God. This is us playing our part. Continuing in the New Testament, Little children, you are from God and you've overcome them. Why? Because greater is He who is in you than he who is in the world. You see the connections between these New Testament dynamics and what's going on in the book of Esther. So again, the question is, why should we celebrate? Well, this is the same God doing the same kind of awesome stuff to bring us into a place where we live life abundantly and represent Him well. Look at the book of Revelation. They overcame him, the enemy, the oppressor, because of the blood of the Lamb, because of what God has done, and because they didn't love their life even to death. Like Esther, willing to step up and play what little or big part in the big picture play of what God is doing in the world. These are the components that bring deliverance. God's mercy, God's power, God's willingness to be involved, and then our willingness to make ourselves available to Him. So let me just wish you a Chag Purim Sameach, a very happy Purim, and may God bless you with that deliverance, with that abundant life that Esther and her crew experienced, that this New Testament community we hear about in the 1st century AD. It doesn't matter that this thing started 2,500 years ago. God's got that deliverance. He's got that presence of God to bless your life and to make you then a blessing for everybody around you. Chag Purim Sameach. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch our videos. If you're benefiting from the content that you're receiving from them, please make sure that you're following us on Facebook and that you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you never miss a thing. While you're at it, share our content with your friends and family. Encourage them to follow us as well. Thanks for helping us to reach as many as we can with a powerful message of God's Word in its original context.